Hello and welcome back guys to another Satisfactory video, and today we're going to be covering the recently released trains. Now if you do find this video helpful, be sure to drop a thumbs up, and please bear in mind that with the game in early access there will no doubt be changes to the system, so if you want to keep up to date with the trains and other guides in Satisfactory, then be sure to click on the subscribe button. So first off, trains are a newly added vehicle which allow for high-speed transportation at the cost of high energy consumption. Now the faster it goes or the steeper the incline, the higher the cost. So, in order to unlock trains you have to research the monorail technology at Hub Tier 6. Now the cost to unlock this is 100 computers, 150 modular frames and 200 motors, so it's quite steep for Tier 6. Now upon unlocking the technology, you will now have 6 new items unlocked in the Vehicles tab: a train station, freight platform, empty platform, as well as a railway, electric locomotive and freight car. Now many people have mentioned that the trains only run on loops. Now this is fortunately for us not true, but does require a slightly different setup, and depending on how you wish to run your railway, it may be more efficient to run a terminal style system which goes back and forth along a straight line compared to a looped system, which will generally take longer due to using more track. Now today we're going to cover both systems. So first and foremost, we've covered a relatively large area with concrete to make this an easy example to follow. And we are going to place 2 train stations at either end, one for the loop system and one for the terminal system. Once you've done this, we will create a loop on the top railway, and please note that a looped system requires train stations to be directed in the same direction, whereas if you want to run a terminal style railway, regardless of whether it connects to the loop later on, you will need to at least have the first and last station directed in the opposite direction. Next we shall place trains on both circuits before setting a timetable between station A and station B, and then connect the railway terminal with the electricity. Note that in order to run a terminal system you will need a push-pull locomotive which has a locomotive at either end, whereas for the looped system you can just use one locomotive. Now if you want, you can rename the stations by clicking on the station name, and if for whatever reason you need to delete the train, you do have to ensure it's at a full stop beforehand, otherwise it will not be able to be removed. An important note is once you've set up your timetables and put the power on, to automate the train, you may need to enter the train and accelerate it briefly for the AI to take over once you leave. Now you will also need to ensure that the train stations are as long as the trains. Therefore a train, for example, with 2 locomotives and a single freight cart will require 3 station pieces, such as a station, empty station and a freight platform, or a station and 2 freight platforms, whereas a train with 1 locomotive and a freight cart will require just 2 platforms. Now before we move on to slightly more complex features, I'd like to add that power travels along the rail, which means that you can actually now connect multiple factories via train stations in order to transport electricity, meaning that we don't have to build multiple power stations at each of our factories. Now another note in regards to power is that it requires, as we mentioned before, exponentially more power to drive up an incline. However, a lot of players have already complained, saying that the energy draw should be a lot higher during the steep inclines, a view which, generally speaking, I also agree with. We can also have multiple trains on a looped track. However, with AI functions limited, you will have to be careful not to have the trains bump into one another on a track, as this can cause some less than desired bugs, but generally speaking, won't disrupt the system too much. Now, when it comes to importing and exporting items, we are actually very lucky in that the freight platform has both 2 inputs and 2 outputs, which is great as it will allow for quicker importing and exporting of items, and the trains will also collect all items from stations along the timetable rather than just collecting one freight and returning it. Now, this can be useful or problematic depending on whether you're collecting a mixture of items or just dropping off and collecting a single item type. This will mean that either sorters are going to become a lot more important, especially for larger builds when using trains to transport multiple items in bulk, or people are going to have to spend more time dictating which stations drop off or collect items, as well as in which order. So a lot more logistics for us to think about, which is actually quite fun. Now, as a lot of you know, I have actually been really excited to get my hands on trains and have been looking at doing more advanced builds for using trains, and thus thought it would be best to do a very quick AI test in this video, as I wanted to see what would happen if we created a loop which we could actually then invert. Now, this is pretty simple, as we are easily able to split tracks by placing a rail on the end section of another rail segment, and by creating an X in the middle, the circuit can invert. And all you would need to do is flip the switch. However, when it comes to AI trains, they automatically switch the switch if they need to progress to a station. So with this in mind, I then deleted one of the side segments of the original circuit, hoping the train would switch. However, as the stations were now on contrasting directions, the train could not pass to the next station. However, if you add a loop at the end of the other train station, the train will be able to pass to the correct destination. Another really important thing to bear in mind while you're building your railway networks is that AI trains take the quickest route without variation. Therefore, given the option, they will take the shortest route possible, meaning that splits, unless using trains pathing to different stations, crossing multiple lines, are at this stage useless. Unless, of course, you're driving the train, which in itself actually causes its own issues, as it would be really lovely to be able to choose the direction we go, using the A and D keys to dictate left or right at the split. This unfortunately is not the case, and you will have to leave the train each time to change the switch settings if you wish to travel elsewhere. So that's all we have time for in this very quick video guide on setting up a railway system. Now, if you did enjoy the video, if you found it helpful, then please do drop a thumbs up. And if you want to see more advanced railway layouts, subscribe and let me know in the comment section, as we'll be having a few more videos on this in the coming months. Anyway guys, until next time, thanks for watching. Ciao for now.